My daughter once promised we'd plan her wedding together, every flower, every song, every small, perfect detail. It felt unbreakable, stitched into the years that made us who we were. I never imagined I'd watch her break it with a smile. The day Clara called to tell me she was engaged, joy filled my chest so quickly it almost hurt. "He proposed. Evan asked me to marry him," she said, breathless with excitement. I laughed through tears, already picturing us flipping through bridal magazines, arguing over shades of ivory, staying up too late cutting ribbons like we did for her high school graduation. But joy has its own quiet way of leaving, slipping out the back door before you notice the cold. From the beginning, every idea I offered seemed to drift elsewhere. "Mom, don't worry. Evan's mother knows some wonderful venues. Margaret already has everything under control." That name, Margaret Whitmore, began to echo through every conversation, a soft bell marking distance. By spring, Clara's words carried a practiced tone that didn't sound like hers anymore. "Margaret thinks it'll be more elegant this way. Margaret said it would take pressure off you." I had once been her anchor. Now I was an obligation she needed to manage. One evening, I stopped by her apartment unannounced, carrying fabric swatches and a little hope that maybe I still belonged in her plans. Margaret was already there, glass of white wine in hand, clipboard gleaming under the lamp. She smiled, perfectly polite and perfectly sharp. "Oh, Mrs. Halbrook," she said sweetly. "We've just finalized everything, but thank you for coming." I stood in the doorway, folder pressed to my chest like a bouquet no one wanted. Clara didn't meet my eyes. Driving home beneath the Charleston bridges, the lights shimmered across the water cold, flawless, and far away. That was the night I understood our promise hadn't been forgotten. It had been replaced. The boutique smelled like roses and starch, the kind of air that pretends to be gentle. I parked outside, clutching the small box of pearl pins Clara and I had picked out years ago, when we used to dream about this day. Inside, 2 young women were arranging veils on a mannequin. I smiled and said softly, "I'm here for my daughter's fitting, Clara Halbrook. Well, soon to be Whitmore." One of them blinked, checking a list on her tablet. "Oh, Mrs. Halbrook," she hesitated, biting her lip. "I'm so sorry, but Mrs. Whitmore asked that fittings remain family only." For a moment, I just stood there, waiting for the air to move. "I am family," I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. The girl looked down, cheeks red. "I know, ma'am. It's just..." That's what she said. Behind her, I caught a glimpse of Clara through the fitting room curtain, her laughter light and unfamiliar. Margaret's silhouette stood beside her, holding up lace. They looked like a picture torn from a bridal magazine, one that didn't need me in it. I stepped back. My shoes made too much noise on the polished floor. "Please tell Clara I stopped by," I whispered, even though I knew she already knew I would come. Outside, the air was heavier than before. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the steering wheel. The box of pearl pins sat unopened beside me. That evening, my phone buzzed. "Clara, Mom, please don't be upset. It's just simpler this way. Don't take it personally." I read it 3 times, trying to find warmth in the words. There was none. I typed and deleted a dozen replies before settling on nothing at all. Sometimes silence is the only way to hide how much something hurts. When I finally turned off the lamp and lay in bed, the scent of that boutique roses and starch still clung to me. It wasn't sweetness I smelled anymore. It was distance, pressed and ironed into something that used to be love. 2 weeks before the wedding, my neighbor, Mrs. Carter, waved me over from her porch. "Marion, look what just came in the mail. Isn't it the most elegant thing you've ever seen?" She handed me an ivory envelope sealed with gold wax. My fingers trembled before I even opened it. "Whitmore Halbrook Wedding." It read at the top in looping script. Beneath that, the line that stopped my breath, "Hosted by the Whitmore family." There was no mention of me. No mother of the bride, No Halbrook name at all. I ran my thumb along the edge of the paper, pretending to admire it. It's beautiful, I managed, forcing a smile. You must be so excited, she said cheerfully, unaware she was twisting a knife I hadn't realized was still in me. When I got home, I searched my mail pile twice, then 3 times. Nothing. No envelope with my name. No invitation. By evening, I couldn't stand the silence anymore. I called Clara. She answered on the 3rd ring. Her voice was light, careful. Hi, Mom. Everything okay? I saw one of the invitations today, I said. Mrs. Carter received hers. It says, hosted by the Whitmore family. There was a pause. Oh, yeah. Margaret thought it looked classier that way. I waited for the rest, for her to say my name, for her to realize what she'd done. But she only added softly, everyone knows you're part of it anyway. I felt something shift inside me, not anger, not sadness, just the hollow echo of being forgotten. Of course, I said quietly. Everyone knows, Mom. She started. Please don't make this about, I won't. I interrupted. I promise. When the call ended, I sat at the kitchen table, the phone still in my hand, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. Later, I took out my late husband's old fountain pen and wrote my name on a blank sheet of paper. Just my name, nothing else. For a long time, I stared at the ink, dark and certain proof that I still existed, even if no invitation ever said so. The email arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. The subject line read, "Pending wedding payments." I thought it was spam until I saw the sender Caroline Pierce, assistant to Mrs. Margaret Whitmore. Inside were neat bullet points. Venue, Magnolia Oaks Estate. Florist, Bloom and Vine. Catering, Hamilton Events. Gown, Whitmore family account. Reimbursable through Halbrook Trust. At the bottom, a single line waited like a command. Please have Mrs. Halbrook authorize payment from the trust. For a long moment, I stared at the screen, the cursor blinking like it was mocking me. I could almost hear my husband's voice, his steady warmth, the day he signed those papers. For Clara's future, he'd said. We had called it the wedding fund. His final act of love before the hospital took him from us. The phone rang. Clara. Mom. Did you get the email? Her tone was bright, rehearsed. I did, I said softly. It's a lot of money. Clara, she sighed. Margaret already handled most of it. You don't need to worry. Mom, just sign the checks. It's all from the trust Dad left. I closed my eyes. Your father wanted you to have something beautiful, I said. He didn't mean for me to be a silent sponsor. Mom, please, she said, her voice tightening. It's too late to change things. Everything's already booked. I heard voices behind her laughter. Movement. The sound of glasses clinking. Margaret's tone cut faintly through the receiver. Calm and commanding. Clara lowered her voice. I'll call you later, okay? We're in the middle of a tasting. The line went dead. I looked again at the account documents. At my husband's handwriting on the line that read, Halbrook Family Trust. Then I printed the email, folded it once, and placed it beside his photo on the mantel. I'll take care of her, he had promised, and I had believed him. Now, it seemed I was the only one still keeping that promise. By Friday evening, I convinced myself there had been a mistake, some crossed name, some forgotten message. Clara hadn't meant to leave me out. She couldn't have. I wrapped the old lace veil from my wedding in tissue paper and tied it with blue ribbon. It was something borrowed, something old, something that might still connect us. The church sat glowing in the Charleston dusk, the stained glass windows flickering with candlelight. I parked and walked up the stone steps, the box trembling slightly in my hands. Inside, a young woman with a clipboard turned toward me. Can I help you? Ma'am, I'm here for the rehearsal dinner, I said. My daughter, Clara Halbrook. Her smile faltered. She flipped through a few pages. Mrs. Halbrook, I'm sorry, but Mrs. Whitmore's list doesn't include you. I blinked. There must be a mistake. I'm the bride's mother. The coordinator's tone softened, but her eyes darted to the door behind her. I understand, ma'am, but I was told to admit only approved guests. I wish I could help. From where I stood, I could see through the half-open door white tablecloths, golden lights, people laughing. Clara sat near the front, radiant, in a soft cream dress. Margaret was beside her, touching her shoulder, whispering something that made my daughter laugh harder. The sound of it cut through me. I took a small step forward, clutching the box tighter. Could you please just tell Clara I'm here? The coordinator hesitated, then shook her head gently. Mrs. Whitmore said no interruptions tonight. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. Outside, the air was humid and heavy. I walked back to my car, every step measured, every heartbeat louder than the next. The veil's ribbon came loose, a corner of lace brushing against my wrist. I opened the passenger door and set the box down carefully, as if it were made of glass. Then I sat behind the wheel, staring at the lights through the church window, my daughter's laughter spilling into a room I no longer belonged to. The morning of the wedding began like any other Saturday. The air was heavy with the smell of rain, the kind that Charleston wears like a veil. I sat by the window with my phone on the table, waiting for a message that never came. No directions. No pickup time. No see you soon, Mom, by 10. I told myself the delay meant nothing. By 11, I stopped pretending. At noon, my niece Hannah texted me. Hannah, look. Aunt Marion, they're starting. A blue link followed Whitmore Halbrook wedding. Livestream. I hesitated, my thumb trembling before I pressed play. The church filled the screen, glowing under golden light. Clara walked down the aisle on Evan's arm, her dress shimmering like frost. Margaret stood near the altar beside Evan's father, composed and radiant, nodding to the guests as if she owned the air itself. Then the camera panned. A front row seat bore a nameplate, Mother of the Bride. Empty. I gripped my teacup tighter, afraid it might shatter in my hands. My reflection wavered on the screen, not part of the scene. Just a ghost watching from another life. When the vows began, Clara's voice quivered. You've made me feel loved every day, Evan, she said. Margaret dabbed at her eyes. The cameraman caught that moment perfectly. I whispered, you forgot the part about who taught you what love is. The ceremony ended in applause. Confetti filled the air, white and perfect. I closed the laptop before the reception began. For a long time, I just sat there, tea cold, silence pressing against the walls. Across the room, the photo of my wedding still hung above the mantel, my husband's hand holding mine, our faces full of beginnings. I rose and walked over, touching the glass with my fingertips. At least now I know where I stand, I said softly. Outside, thunder rolled over the harbor. Somewhere, bells rang for my daughter's new life. And here, in this quiet room, I realized how far away that life had moved from mine. The morning after the wedding, the world outside looked the same, quiet streets. Birds on the wire, but my inbox was filled with invoices. Each one arrived with the same precision that had excluded me final catering balance, remaining floral payment, music deposit. The numbers blurred together, a cold echo of what I'd once called love. At 10 o'clock sharp, I called the bank. The clerk answered, cheerful and unknowing. Good morning, Coastal First Bank. How may I assist you? My name is Marion Halbrook, I said evenly. I need to cancel every pending check drawn from the Halbrook Wedding Trust. Every check, she asked, startled. May I ask the reason for cancellation? I hesitated only for a breath, because I wasn't invited. There was silence, then a small, awkward cough. Understood, Mrs. Halbrook. I'll process that immediately. By afternoon, the first messages arrived. The florist payment declined. The event manager funds missing. The caterer's tone was sharper. We'll be seeking compensation. 2 days later, my phone lit up with Clara's name. I answered. Mom, she began, her voice already trembling. What did you do? Margaret says. The vendors are threatening to sue us. I did exactly what you told me to. I said, I stopped worrying. I just stopped signing the checks. Mom, please, this isn't the time. It was never the time. Clara, I interrupted, softly but firmly. You built a wedding without me. But you expected my name to pay for it. That's not love. That's accounting. Her breath hitched. In the background, I heard Margaret's voice, low, furious, commanding. I have to go, Clara whispered. I know, I said. You always do? When the line went dead, I sat in the stillness of my kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator steady beneath my heartbeat. The trust documents lay on the table, signed by my husband long ago. I slid them back into their envelope, sealed it, and whispered to the empty room. It's done. For the first time in months, I felt something like air returning to my lungs. By the end of the week, Charleston had already picked a side. At the market, whispers followed me between the aisles. The bride's mother canceled the payments. Can you imagine? The same women who once asked for my pound cake recipe now looked away when I passed. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. There was nothing left to defend. 3 days later, a white envelope appeared in my mailbox. The letterhead read, Whitmore and Associates. The words inside were sharp, written by Margaret's attorney but dripping with her tone. We will pursue recovery of all unpaid contractual balances related to the event. I smiled for the first time in days. The trust was under my sole control, every cent, legally protected. My husband had written it that way after his first hospital scare. Just in case someone ever tries to use your kindness against you, he'd said. That night, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and reread one of his old letters. The paper had yellowed, but the ink was steady. You've always given too much. Marion, promise me you'll keep something for yourself. The next morning, I went out to the garden. The roses had suffered while I'd been gone, petals browned at the edges, soil gone dry. I knelt and began to trim them carefully, whispering to each stem like they could hear me. A car slowed by the curb. I didn't turn. I didn't need to see who it was. They paused long enough to stare, then drove on. Inside, I opened my journal. The words came slowly, almost without thinking. Maybe losing them saved the rest of me. I closed the book and let the quiet settle around me. It was the kind of silence that didn't demand an apology, the kind that finally felt like mine. The night it rained, I couldn't sleep. The house creaked like it was trying to talk me out of what I was about to do. I lit a small lamp and pulled a sheet of paper from the drawer. My hands trembled, but the words came faster than I expected. Clara, I raised you to be kind, not obedient to pride. I never wanted to control your happiness, only to share it. I didn't need the perfect wedding. I just needed a seat in the room where my daughter promised forever. Tears splashed onto the page, blurring the ink. I wiped them away and kept writing. I don't hate Margaret. I pity her. She's never known love that wasn't purchased or planned. I hope you never forget what real love looks like, even when it's quiet, even when it hurts. I folded the letter carefully, slid it into an envelope, and set it on the table. I told myself I wouldn't send it. I'd written it only to let the words breathe. But by morning, the air felt heavy, unfinished. I drove across town to Clara's apartment. The parking lot was still wet from the storm. I stood at her door, listening laughter from a television inside, a faint clatter of dishes. My heart stuttered. Then, before I could talk myself out of it, I bent down and slipped the envelope beneath the door. I walked away without looking back. Weeks passed. I didn't expect an answer. Then, One afternoon, a small cream-colored envelope arrived, addressed in Clara's handwriting. My breath caught as I unfolded it. Mom. I didn't realize how cruel it looked until I saw the photos. I'm sorry. I don't know how to fix what I broke, but I want to try. The paper shook in my hands. I pressed it to my chest and closed my eyes. For the first time in months, I let myself cry, not from pain, but from the fragile hope that something lost might still find its way home. Spring came slowly that year, as if the world itself was learning how to start over. I was trimming the rose bushes when I heard a car door close outside. For a moment, I thought it was the mailman. Then I heard her voice. Mom! I turned. Clara stood by the gate, hair pulled back, no makeup, no diamonds, just my daughter again. I wiped my hands on my apron, afraid that if I spoke too soon, the moment would vanish. You found me, I said softly. She smiled, small and unsure. Evan and I moved out of his parents' house. It was time. She hesitated, glancing down. I miss you, Mom. I felt my throat tighten. You took your time, I said, half teasing, half trembling. I was scared, she whispered, of what you'd say, of what you wouldn't. I set down my shears. There's nothing left to say that hasn't already been said. I told her, but there's plenty we can still do. Her eyes filled. Like what I handed her a pair of gloves from the porch rail. Help me replant. The roses didn't make it through winter. For a while, we worked in silence, digging, patting soil, pressing new roots into the earth. The wind carried the scent of something clean, something forgiving. When she finally spoke again, her voice was barely a breath. I kept your letter, she said. I read it every night for a week. I didn't realize how much I hurt you. I looked at her, dirt on her hands, streaks on her cheeks from tears and sun. We both hurt, I said, but hurt can grow into something else if you give it light. Clara reached for my hand, squeezing it tight. Next time, she said, whatever it is, we'll plan it together. I smiled. That's all I ever wanted. The afternoon sun slipped through the branches, warm against our faces. Between the rows of new roses, something fragile and beautiful began to take root, not just flowers, but the space between us, finally blooming again.